Hey, let's just jump into it. Ooh, it's bright, it's sunny, it's gorgeous. And it's chapter 13, Bullet Club. What can I say? Favorite chapter to date. And looking a little ahead, um, each one of these chapters, on average, is getting longer and longer. And this chapter, The Bullet Club by Matt, also has the pictures on the inside. So I'm going to actually do a little review of the picture gallery on the inside of the book as well. Um, So it opens with a very simple Tiger Hattori calling him. Um, Okada vouched for him. He says they're good workers. He said you're good boys. The contract was for 1,800 a week. Yay, Japan! And the Bucks, who have now learned to negotiate at least a little, they accepted, but they want to sell their merchandise as well. Sounds great. Now, keep in mind they're both fathers, and their wives are going to have a tough time with them going on these tours, but that is what it is, right? Um, so they're going to miss a lot of family stuff. So they just pushed it up a couple of weeks to get it all in. It's hard to not like the Bucks, right? They're very conscious of keeping their families in the loop. It was mentioned more than once during this chapter where Matt was like, when you read all these old books by wrestlers or stories from older veteran wrestlers, they always talk about how they let their kind of family obligations slide through wrestling, and they were determined to make up for that when they weren't in Japan. But in Japan, they were going to be, because, of course, they formed the Bullet Club. All of that stuff is really great. I don't want to spoil any of it. I will say that Bad Luck Fale was a guy that we gave his first American thing to at PCW, where he got no brawl with Jeter. Super awesome. God, it's a genius booker who booked that. Uh, but they go into a thing about the Bucks did not like the Bullet Club's logo at first, but I think they got over that once they started selling like crazy, even to the point where when they would bring Bullet Club shirts back, they were getting offered, like a guy offered them 80 pounds when he saw the shirt. He's like, I'll give you 80 pounds for that shirt right now. Holy crap. All the great stuff about this interaction with the sponsors in Japan, these guys who would pay for your dinner and wanted pictures of you and all this kind of great stuff. Again, I just don't want to spoil any of this because it's just so much fun, right? And they had a number of great outings, but it was good to note that they had their first match, which was an undercard match, and they went all out because that's what they had been doing. They just went super crazy on all their matches, and they were definitely told, like, motherfuckers, don't do that, right? That we build to a logical conclusion here. Once you do the Tokyo Dome show, yeah, go ahead, but until then, like, tone it down. They went into great detail about who their good friends were on the road and the kind of activities they did with those friends, whether it was watching bad wrestling matches and that kind of thing, and all the early interplay they had with the Bullet Club people. Super great. But now I want to go in. This chapter's cut in twain by the pictures. I was going to scan these pictures and show them, and I realized, like, that's not cool. Like, this is their book, right? I will show you this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at all those freaking pictures. It is the best collection of pictures I've ever seen in a wrestling book that was an autobiography or a biography. Not only are there more pictures, it really runs the gamut, right? Really runs the gamut of, like, here's childhood pictures, but all of them are wrestling related, loosely, at least, right? You get to see them building their first ring. You get to see them. The affection is really evident, and their upbringing. I mean, all the stuff that you've read about in the book up to now. There's pictures representing all of those moments, like their first pro wrestling shows, all their stuff as Mr. BYWA or Slick Nick, when they had to dress as the chickens for that pro show. Dana, the future wife Dana, walking down to the aisle. Just really, really cool. The first incarnation, or one of them, of the Young Bucks pose. I think that this is interesting by judging from pronoun usage, right? So it says High Risk Wrestling's Highway to Hell in July 2004, Dana walking me down the aisle. And then when Nick is doing something, Nick has never been afraid to jump off of high things. So clearly Matt did the captions for these as well, which I think is really cool. Another little personal touch. The obvious affection and team, and you get to see the sort of evolution through the outfits that they wear, the people that they work with, working with more and more pros. They're always quick to give credit, right? The picture that they have with Canyon, and they're quick to give him, like, he taught us so much. PWG tag champs, the wall that Foreigners signed at Kodokan Hall, wedding pictures. Just, it's so thorough, and it's so cool, and showing their wives to be working at their merch table, pictures with Kevin Owens. It's just so great. Even stuff that they would do on their days off in Japan, stuff with Kenny Omega, pictures of the IWGP tag titles, junior tag titles with his daughter, giving Kerry Silkin his due. Showing how they built their sort of merch empire out of a 2-bedroom apartment. It's just so great. I'm just such a fan. I deliberately had not looked at the pictures until I arrived at them naturally by getting to that place in the book. And I'm glad I waited, because it's... Oh, and of course Okada, who was treated like nothing at TNA, but became the big star at New Japan. And then, the stuff that you have to look forward to soon, right? Final bout at the Hammerstein Ballroom. Night before All In. 10,000 screaming fans at the largest independent wrestling show. A picture with them and Dave Meltzer and Fat Ass Masa, the frickin' super fan sponsor in Japan. Super cool. And then a great picture of their family with their sister and younger brother and mom and dad. And then their final Wrestle Kingdom match at the Tokyo Dome with their kids. I mean, just knowing that it's going to be... They're going to have the scratch to bring their families to see Japan. I mean, it's something I dream about with my kids, that they can see Hawaii where I grew up and Japan where I lived on more than one occasion. And then they end it with their first ever t-shirt design. Again, a little wink, wink, nod, nod about their cool sense of humor. But again, for the wrestlers that fantasize about wrestling in Japan, aka all of them worth a shit, you need to read this stuff. You need to see this stuff. You need to see how they handled themselves and how they survived and how they really made it work. And so New Japan offers them a big deal, like, where they like, we want you to make us the priority, and we want to bring you in 15 weeks out of the year. And so they would go on these tours, and then it seemed like as soon as they were home for a little while, they'd have to go back. And so Matt talks a lot about how they handled the kids at this time, and having to send the kid to preschool much earlier than they would have wanted to, because they had real considerations, right? They sent her to this Montessori school that cost almost as much as their house did on the mortgage payments. So, even though they were making more money, they were still like struggling. And always smart to note, I mean, there's just so much here for you. And again, I love Matt's writing style, because it really sets the stage. It's really laid out incredibly well. The details are the details that you want to know about, like money and specific stories. I mean, the one about the sponsor that insists on getting chopped by all of the Bullet Club, but wants to get super kicked, and then they super kick him, and they catch the video on the phone, and they're showing everybody, including the booker, and they think they're going to get in trouble because they super kicked this sponsor, but instead he loves it. And it's just all these cool, great stories. Matt and and Nick are not drunken reprobates. So if you want those kind of stories, you're not going to get them. But what they do is they are the boys, right? They are with the boys, and they tell a good story. And there's a bunch of really funny ones. And then they kind of conclude with, AJ Styles being there enjoying the Bullet Club. And there's going to be a special guest on this tour. And it ends with, I kept gazing down the row of seats until I saw that curly-haired friend I'd only seen briefly one other time since that snowstorm in New York City in 2009. Hey, Bucks, it's been a while. Shouted an excited Kenny Omega. And it is excited. The next chapter is called Bloodstained Sneaker by Nick. And you can see we're getting there towards the end of the book. And I have a feeling that this book, like other great works that I'm into, whether they're series, like a comic series like Lone Wolf and Cub, which is my favorite comic ever, or, a magnificent television series that you've been following, or even a sort of an epic movie of considerable length, think like Scarface, where it's like 3 hours and that kind of thing. When you reach the end of these things, and I'm sure this is a relatively common experience that you and I share, is you feel this profound sense of like awe and also loss, right? The great story has now been told. And I'm glad I decided to go with this a chapter a day, because I would have just eaten this thing up in a day, which would have been great because then I would know what was going on at the end of this book. But in a sense, I can already tell I'm going to feel like, whew, I've been through the journey with these guys and I like these guys much more. I make it akin to, just to put it in context of other wrestling books, I put it there with like the Jericho book, the first one, or the Bret Hart book, of books that I just really enjoyed that journey, especially the pro wrestling part of their journey so much, and all the little inside stuff that they tell you about. I really can't come up with higher praise than putting it with Bret Hart book. And it's not nearly as long as the Bret Hart book, of course, but I'm just mean in terms of like how the story's told and the kind of things that they accomplished, including the innovative things that they're doing, both in marketing terms and in-ring and all the rest of it, and the personalities that they meet along the way. It's really good. I'm putting in the pantheon, very high pantheon of those wrestling books, right? There are other great wrestling books, don't get me wrong, but I think like Have a Nice Day by Mick Foley is a different kind of book than this somewhat. I think the Gary Hart book is a very different kind of book because he did a bunch of different kind of things. But again, I put them all at that top level of just really great wrestling books. At least so far, I haven't reached the end. I haven't reached the AEW stuff, which I could see the chapters are getting longer and longer as we get near the end. So they're really going to go into detail about the AEW things, which I think is really cool. For the pictures alone, this book really delivers the goods. It's just wonderful. So that has been my review and analysis of Chapter 13 and the pictures in the middle. I'm Stephen Platinum, and I'm going to see you tomorrow.